They could be anybody under the sun, and that guy at the DMV, or Mr. Kaplan being who she is, each of them are so odd and yet interesting and pull you in a way that I think is a good example of those guys defining this world in a way we haven't seen before.
He has a very, very small circle of people that are very, very close. And then the next circle are people that he does business with and are associates, and some of them who he would consider to be friends. Not friends, but that he cares about a great deal and that he's enjoyed time with. It's not a matter of just exploiting their skill set.
His name is Dembe. Dembe Zuma.
Dembe is the shit. And I know you can't use that because...
Sure we can.
I can use that? Oh, great. That's good. So use that.
It serves no purpose to kill him now.
You see that, Jeff? That is what a good man does. That is what separates men like him from men like you and me.
So I would describe Dembe as trustworthy, loyal, helpful, friendly. I don't know about that one. Yeah, he's friendly. So it's trustworthy, loyal, helpful, friendly, courteous, kind, obedient, cheerful, thrifty, brave, clean, and reverent.
Like the Scouts.
Yeah, the Scouts.
Dembe is a character who is probably the closest thing that Red has to a friend, a real trusted confidant.
I think he probably thinks of Dembe more as a compatriot than anything else. I think he really just feels that they're living this life together. He's living his life with Dembe, and Dembe is living his life with him. I mean, they live together.
The relationship is very close, and the interesting thing is, for a large amount of the time that I was shooting, I didn't know what the basis of it was, so I had to create that.
In the Mombasa Cartel episode where Reddington explains how Dembe came into his life, and we get a little bit of Dembe's bio, that was fun for the writers to really state some of that for the record, and to know that was, so that the fans know that he's a character that the writers think about a lot and talk about a lot, and it was great to get him a little bit more, his information out there a little bit more.
A lot of people, I'm constantly seeing tweets and stuff saying, why don't we hear more from him? Why doesn't he say more? When's he going to get to do more? Well, one of the things about Dembe is that he doesn't say a lot, but when he says it, it's important.
You need to tell her, Raymond.
Tell her what?
About Tom. You should have told her some time ago.
There are times when Red does not act in a way that Dembe thinks is moral, and ultimately there will come a time where that will cause them a great deal of discord.
I don't think I can do that.
Maybe you should stop thinking about it and do it.
I think it's really nice to be an old lady on television that's capable, smart, funny, and compassionate. I think it's great.
Mr. Kaplan. I'm sorry it's messier than I'd hoped.
Don't worry, dearie. I'm used to cleaning up after you.
I remember when we were casting Mr. Kaplan, we had the idea for Mr. Kaplan, and when we wanted to cast a female, I think the network and the studio were going, okay, wait a minute, Mr. Kaplan, what does this mean? And then when we wanted to cast Susan, who does it, she's so specific. She's so the last thing you would expect.
Got units securing the perimeter and a chopper inbound to evac the patient.
No, we're not.
We recently did a shootout scene, and she has this big .357 Magnum, and it was just so funny seeing her hold this gun and shoot it, and then, convey to me at the end that, a gun isn't something she usually works with, but you're looking at her and you're like, you think she's handled every weapon that they've made.
She really cares for Reddington. She loves him, as maybe a big sister would. I'm not saying she's his big sister for the audience, just in that way.
What are you doing, Kate?
Keeping you alive.
There's nothing you can do here.
I'm not leaving you, Raymond.
Besides Dembe, I think that she's unquestionably the closest person to Reddington that there is.
I think it's an old relationship. I think there's an amazing amount of respect for each other, a great understanding of each other, and I will use the word love for each other.
Raymond Reddington. Mr. Vargas.
Mr. Vargas, I think, is just so fun because we all love Pee Wee Herman, and the idea of having him on the show and having him sort of with Spader with his little mock turtleneck has just been so fun to write to and so fun to have on the show.
I find Chrome to be a bit ostentatious.
Paul Reubens is somebody that the role of Mr. Vargas was crafted for. Luke Ryder and Rick Orsi, who created that character, thought he would be great.
I'm sorry, Mr. DeMarcus. The truth is, I'm the one who misled you.
So we reached out to casting and they said, well, why don't you have a conversation? And I talked to Paul about it and explained, you know, who the character was. And he was familiar with the show and he told me, he said, look, John, I think this is great, but my one concern is the blood. You know, I kind of have a concern about the blood. And I thought, oh my God, it's gonna be, the show's too violent. He's not gonna wanna do it because, and he said, no, I mean just the blood. Like seeing the blood, I have a weak stomach and that I'm worried that that might bother me. And I remember saying to him, like, Paul, that's the character, like that's it, you know, and there's a scene now where he sees the blood and he goes, oh my God, I told you, you know, none of the bloody stuff.
Honestly, how many times have we discussed this?
What?
You know I don't like being around the bloody stuff.
Oh.
I need to be allowed to leave the room before the blood. You know I don't have a strong constitution.
Give him his seat. He's gonna faint.
Paul had the idea for this crazy wig and the turtleneck. It's so...
Oh my.
It's so specific and delicious and weird.
And he said that he usually figures out his character. He knows he's figured out his character when he knows what his character's hair is gonna be like.
I imagine that Mr. Vargas has a whole closet full of wigs, you know. He might have a blonde wig. He probably has some sort of nice crew cut wig, you know. I think he's sort of like Dolly Parton, you know. Every time we see him, we'll see him having another wig. For some reason, I don't know why, Wilford Brimley like popped into my head, and I was talking to John about it, and we're like, yeah, Brimley, okay, so Brimley's sort of not the young, strapping type that you might expect would be waterboarding somebody. And then we're like, yeah, well, if we're gonna do that, let's just embrace it.
Fellow won't talk.
Keep pushing him.
I'm telling you, he's more scared of talking than he is of dying.
Keep pushing.
I'm gonna need lunch. Tuna on rye, coleslaw if they have it.
I have a soft spot for Brimley because, you know, he always walks with the oxygen tank and the cannula. My dad used to have an oxygen tank and a cannula, and I was like, yeah, well, that's what he should have. And he's very, just, again, not your average enhanced interrogator.
You know, so out of that comes this guy who sort of speaks in these Dan Ratherisms, you know.
I pushed her hard. And I'm telling you, that girl's cleaner than a duck fart.
Whatever that means, you know, he sort of is a very strange guy. And the other thing about Brimley is that I don't even think we're quite sure what he's doing to get these people to talk.
I've received information from my sources confirming that Katagurt is in country.
I'm gonna need a bag of dry ice and 5 feet of vinyl garden hose.
I have ideas of what he might be doing, you know, and even what he's doing is probably not what I'm thinking, you know. So Brimley's always kind of in the other room. He's got somebody in another room doing something. He's not the guy who's gonna break anybody's fingers or, you know, pull out teeth. He's a guy who's gonna, you know, stare them into talking, you know, or blow into their eyeball until they can't take it anymore and then they have to talk.
That little fella, the one through the glass, his name is Glenn Carter. His mother calls him Jelly Bean. loathsome individual who, sad to say, possesses an uncanny ability to locate anything.
We needed an information guy. We needed to show the guy that Red goes to who brings him some of the information that we see him show up with sometimes. We didn't want him to come to the post office and keep saying, a guy, you know, word on the street, a guy, I heard from a guy.
Casting is constantly sending, you know, clips of various actors and people that would be fun to work with. And I saw Clark and I was like, okay, this guy, he is on the crew. You know, this guy is in the show. I don't know how.
John had been talking about Jelly Bean. Jelly Bean. We want Jelly Bean. We want to create this character, Jelly Bean. And we were all kind of, after a while, we're kind of rolling our eyes. Like, what? Jelly Bean, you know?
And we didn't know who Jelly Bean was going to be. We just knew that eventually on this show there was going to be a guy named Jelly Bean. And so it was written as Jelly Bean Carter, the guy that you go to for information. And from there it grew into, you know, who is now just Jelly Bean.
I don't have time for this.
Oh, I'm sorry. Has Mom's illness cramped your busy schedule?
Every time you can't deliver, you do this. These cockamamie stories.
My mother is dying.
Yes, and your brother-in-law had Legionnaire's disease, and your house was flooded, and I'm still no closer to finding the girl. Get out!
Red just despises Glenn. You know, he just, this is the last person in the world that he wants to deal with.
Why is he putting up with this guy? Like, Glenn's screaming at him. Like, why would he take 5 minutes to let that happen? And I like to think it's because it's, first of all, normal human interaction, which he doesn't get enough of, and he's very careful in the people he selects.
You're the most gifted tracker I know, Glenn, but your mouth runs like a scalded dog.
I think Red kind of likes having his cage rattled a little bit. And I think Glenn knows that Red likes having his cage rattled, but he also knows that if he rattles Red's cage a little too much, that, you know, somebody's going to shoot his kneecap off or something. You know, it could get really ugly for Glenn.
What are you so upset about?
There isn't a retirement party, is there? You're making it up. That's what this is about. This is what you want. To see me get all lathered up. You're pathological, you realize that, right? Ernie's shrimp platter? You can't be serious. Do you even see the irony in that? Oh.
We have, I think, come to realize that those characters really help to humanize Red. And that if he were with people who were fearful of him and weren't able to be honest with him, it would suggest that Red is a much more small-minded person than we think him to be.
If you look at Mr. Kaplan or Dembe or Glenn, the people that Red sort of trusts most when things get urgent are the people who are not afraid to tell him you're wrong or get in his face, and that's kind of fun.